I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up, then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Today's guest, Malisa Nguyen, is a mental performance coach, speaker, and founder of MTN Collective. Melissa's take is one most reps have never heard. Inconsistency isn't a skill problem, it's a nervous system problem. She started in corporate sales, experienced the overthinking, self-doubt, and burnout firsthand, and spent 5 years studying mental performance and somatic regulation to build a better solution. That solution is flow. Reset, rewire, and repeat. Malisa, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Do Hard Things podcast with your hosts, Gabe and Lexi. We got another great show. I'm super excited about this one. Malisa, we just heard your bio. What a great bio. I'm so happy you're here. So happy to be connected with you also. But hey, why don't you just tell us a little bit about, why you're here? How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm very excited to be here and happy to yap about all things nervous system regulation, mental performance, and flow state.
Yeah, it's pretty fun because these topics we had for the show today are not the ones we typically talk about. But I will tell you, I'm so eager to learn from you, and I love doing shows because I just learn so much, and I cannot wait to get into this. But before we get into the fun stuff, we need to know where you come from. Like, what is your origin story? How did you get into this? And it's so interesting when you get into sales, because I know SDR was your first role. We usually don't go to school and say, okay, I can't wait to go get into sales, mom and dad, after graduation. How did you get into this role? Let's start with the beginning here.
Yeah, so my first entry into sales started actually a few years ago. And I actually got into sales because I was actually struggling in my entrepreneurial journey. And a huge part of my struggle came down to not having the right sales skills to close clients that would come into my world. And since the financial struggles was a huge part of my journey, I couldn't afford to have a sales coach. And I got to a place where I needed to go back to a 9 to 5. And so sales was the first thing that came up for me, because why not get paid to learn sales skills that will directly translate over to what I do as a business owner. And so then I found myself into the world of tech sales, and that experience in and of itself was my first exposure to a performance-based environment. And so I found myself having a level of success pretty quickly early on, just because my previous experience as in entrepreneurship helped me ramp up pretty quickly to it where I was promoted to the senior role within 5 months. And so once I got promoted, that experience in and of itself became a huge challenge for me, jumping from targeting and prospecting into SMB accounts into strategic enterprise level accounts, which is a huge shift in transformation, not transformation, or change for me. And so that experience in and of itself, I would say was a huge challenge, a challenge in the sense where pressure really started to show up in my day to day, and that pressure um is what actually caused me and led me to burnout in a lot of ways. And that experience in the senior role really shine light on a lot of things that I didn't realize that I was struggling with, and also what other reps were struggling with at the time. A huge part of it is the pressure to perform, and having your identity wrapped around your performance and achievements. And so I went from my experience in the SDR role, I went from like, top performer, hitting the ground running, and then all of a sudden promotion and struggling with the new role and the transition. So, yeah, that's when I started struggling, and I felt like I was doing everything right. And the typical, the advice that we get from sales culture is when you're struggling, the response to that would be to do more, hustle more, and do more volume. So I did all of that, but even then couldn't find myself like s- having the same level of success before. And that's when I came to realize that a lot of inconsistency in sales like has a lot to do with nervous system regulation, because if you're operating in survival mode, then that's when it leads to burnout. That's when it leads to a lot of like rock bottom moments that a lot of reps tend to struggle with. And so yeah, I would say that was my SDR experience.
Thank you for sharing all that, and I'm really excited to keep diving more into this. And you've talked about getting laid off during COVID and choosing to see it as an opportunity instead of a setback. What was going on in your head in that moment? How did you make that decision to lead you are to where you are now?
Yes. So before I answer that question, I'll say a couple of things. Is I've actually been laid off 4 times. So I've actually gone through 4 layoffs. That was my first layoff ever. But during that time, that was before my SDR era or a chapter of my life. I was working as a server at the time and trying to make this entrepreneur thing work and trying to figure it out. And so once that layoff happened, I saw it as a sign to go all in, because now I have all this time freed up in my day-to-day work and actually go all in. And so decided to do that, and found a level of success early on where I was able to have meaningful work, do meaningful work with my clients. And then I got to a place where a lot of high achievers find themselves is like they have this level of success, they're doing meaningful work, they're achieving, but they still feel this sense of emptiness inside. And so this is tying back to what I said earlier about like tying your worth to achievements. And so because I found myself in that place, like I had to take some time away and step away from my business to learn how to heal and detach and do the inner work to come to that place of wholeness, and realize that like my worth isn't attached to outcomes or success like that. And so I did that. And then this is kind of like circling back to the first question that you asked, like once I was able to heal from that, I dove back into entrepreneurship. But then my experience coming back into entrepreneurship was a lot harder, because what I was doing then to market myself, to sell, like was no longer working, because I actually come from the online business space where a lot of my marketing and the way that I was selling was from Instagram. And so, around 2020 was when so many people got laid off, right? And so many people jumped into coaching. And because coaching is such a unregulated industry, there's a lot of folks who aren't really qualified or don't have the proper training to be doing this work. And so because of that, people who were buying a lot in the beginning found themselves getting kind of jaded with the coaching industry. And so buyers became a lot more skeptical. The market started to shift. And so I found myself struggling financially again to succeed. And then that's why I found myself in, the corporate sales space again. And then doing that, being able to overcome that place of overcome the rock bottom that I found myself in again, and coming to that place of wholeness where I can show up as my best and perform my best without attaching my worth to outcomes, which then led me to being laid off again. Yeah.
Got it. So you spent 5 years studying mental performance, obviously identity level behavior change. What sent you down that path? What was your biggest thing that you discovered that really changed how you started to understand performance?
Yeah. So what led me along a path into just coaching in general is just my own mental health struggles personally. And so prior to me diving into the world of coaching and getting certified for holistic health and wellness coaching, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And leading up to that diagnosis, lots of highs, lots of lows, to the point where it was impacting my ability to perform. And it was, I'm telling you guys, like, it was so bad to the point where, like, my mental health affected the way that I showed up and performed in my work, where I was let go a few times. So that's why I say, when I said, I was let go a few times, like, I've been through this so many times. And so I've always just been someone who's very ambitious, driven, goal oriented. And because of the fact that my mental health was getting in the way, led me to getting that diagnosis. And once I had that diagnosis, I honestly felt a sense of relief because now I have something to work with. Like, what I was struggling with was not me, it was, you know, my mental health. And so that path or that diagnosis is what led me along a path of personal recovery. And along my path of personal recovery is when I found the world of holistic health and wellness. And while I was trying to heal and recover from that, I was also trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career. And that's when my entrepreneurship journey started. And so I ended up going into getting certified for holistic nutrition and then holistic health and wellness coaching. And that's when I learned that everything that we experience, well, number one, the mind and body are deeply interconnected, and that everything that we are experiencing mentally and emotionally is our body's way of letting us know that something's out of balance. And so what you're experiencing is just symptoms. And so listen to what your symptoms are trying to tell you. And so I did that. I did the investigative work to figure out what the root cause of all my mental health challenges were, applied everything that I've learned to myself over the course of 2 to 3 years. And that's when my mental health changed and transformed. I was able to find a sense of stability again. And because of that transformation, it led me through a paradigm shift where it made me think about like mental health, mental performance differently. And because of that, that's when I felt called to do this work. And I feel like if you're a coach, you're a coach for a reason. You stumble into that path for a reason. I feel like a lot of coaches who are doing similar things to me or find themselves in that similar place where they hit rock bottom, they go through their own journey and they go through their own transformation, and it changes their lives so much to the point where then they feel called to share this work with other people. And so I did that. I did that, and that's when I decided to go into entrepreneurship, and I started out as a lifestyle wellness coach. Bringing this work to high achieving women who want to be able to work towards their goals while being able to enjoy all other aspects of their lives without the burnout. So, regarding what that journey into coaching and studying mental performance coaching has taught me, just because, once I had that transformation for myself, that's when I became obsessed with this work. And that's when I got mentorship and paid for training for nervous system regulation, functional life coaching, somatic experiencing. The biggest thing that taught me is like a lot of what you're experiencing internally or not externally is a reflection of what you are experiencing internally, because behaviors that you're seeing on the outside are just expressions of subconscious beliefs that you have about yourself. And so if you are not able to perform, there's likely, an unconscious belief that you're operating from that you need to learn how to rewire. And once you start to rewire that, that's when everything else on the outside will shift and change for you.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing all of that. I want to dive more into the nervous system and sales performance side of things. Your core belief is that sales inconsistency is a nervous system regulation problem, not a skill problem. Can you make that case for us?
Yes. So first thing I'll say is as far as inconsistency goes, there are a couple of ways in which it can show up on the floor is number one, you have inconsistency with your output, right? So if you have weekly KPIs that you need to hit, whether or not it's emails or dials, like if you aren't being consistent with that, there is one way it shows up, and then there's also inconsistency in your conversion rates. And so let's say that you are hitting your activity metrics, but maybe your connect to pitch or your pitch to conversation or conversation to conversion rates or meetings booked is low. Those are the ways in which inconsistency can show up. And a lot of times, leaders think that it's a skill problem when in actuality it's a nervous system regulation problem. And what I mean by that is if you if you have a rep that is not hitting their metrics consistently, it's likely due to a couple of things. Number one is procrastination or perfectionism. That's something that I'm seeing with one of my current clients at the moment. Perfectionism is a fight response. And so that's, delaying, spending all your times putting together the perfect pitch or the perfect opener to delay the act of actually doing the thing. It typically stems from fear of failure. And so if your reps aren't doing the output, it's not because they don't lack motivation or discipline. It's because there's a subconscious belief that's driving that behavior. And then the second way in which inconsistency shows up is through your conversion rates, right? Specifically in the context of your tone, right? You could be doing all the right things. And so if your tone is off, you're speaking too fast, or you're white knuckling your way through, or you're not really listening to what your prospect is telling you. Gabe, you shared something about this in a post about like the best reps are the ones who are curious about their prospects versus the ones that are trying to say the right things or objection handle to get someone to book a meeting or close. Like those are the different ways a dysregulated nervous system shows up or bleeds through inconsistency. And typically, it's either from when it comes to nervous system regulation, you're either operating from survival mode or you're operating from a place of safety and connection. There's this book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And it talks about self one versus self two. Self one is like the ego mind, right? The dysregulated nervous system mind where you're in survival mode, you're in scarcity mode, you're needing someone to book right away, right? And then there's self two, which is the actual self, like the body, the subconscious mind that already knows how to sell, that already knows how to objection handle, that already knows how to run an effective discovery call. And it's a matter of like figuring out which one is showing up in your world. And the reason why this isn't really an understood thing. I think it's just because the sales industry is a very underserved market and they don't really understand what goes into performance because Gabe, you also mentioned this in one of your podcasts that success is 80% mindset, 20% strategy. And so you can have the right script, you can do everything right. But if you're still not able to perform consistently, it's because of the mindset piece that's getting in the way. That's where the nervous system piece comes into play.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and thanks for the shout out because we're so aligned. That's why I having you on the show, I should say. So let's get back into this dysregulated nervous system because you know it's a long word, it's very scientific, but at the end of the day, to your point, sales is really underserved. It is always attitude is everything, right? And so at the end of the day, how does a rep who doesn't know that this is happening to them deal with this because they're in a state and they don't even know it. So how do they, knowing's half the battle, right? So how do you know that you're in this before you can start seeking to prescribe to it, right?
Yes. So I'll share the work that I do with my clients for them to know that they're in this. Well, the first part is like being educated that it is a nervous system problem. So
right.
understanding how the nervous system works, like everyone has a nervous system. Our nervous system is the part of our body that's always operating on in the back, right? It's there. It's a primitive part of who we are as humans. It's designed to keep us safe from any perceived threat or harm. It's designed to seek pleasure and conserve energy in a lot of ways. And so when our nervous system senses a perceived threat, that's when fight or flight kicks in. And so there's four ways in which our nervous system responses gets activated. Number one is we fight, right? So what that looks like on the sales floor is white knuckling their way through, right? And so if a rep has maybe like a pipeline dry spell or a quiet week, that's when the fight response kicks in. And so when that fight response kicks in, that's when they spray and pray. That's when they're more aggressive and pushy. And that commission breath kicks in with how they're handling objections. So that's the fight response. And then there's the flight response for your nervous system when it's activated. Flight response looks like procrastination. Flight response looks like overthinking, rumination, right? Maybe spending more time on a bad call that didn't go well and you're hyperfixating on how you could have done better, right? Wasting all this time, energy, and effort to learn from it and move on, but you're just like hyperfixating on it, right? This meet goes back to me saying perfectionism. And so if you're spending all this time like trying to perfect your script or whatnot, that's a flight response kicking in. Freeze response is another way your nervous system shows up. Freeze is when the analysis paralysis kicks in. Maybe you have, a day where you show up and you're clocking in, but you're so overwhelmed with all the things that you have to do and you feel this sense of being behind and you're so overwhelmed that your nervous system collapses and it shuts down. So you're just stuck in analysis paralysis and you're like, I don't know how to get out of this. And then there's the fawn response. Fawn response tends to be like people pleasing. And so, a top performer could be someone who overextends themselves when the pressure kicks in. And so they take on more than they need out of the need to feel safe. Or, maybe you're on a discovery call and you're sharing the price and the prospect says that's expensive and immediately instead of just pausing you're going into discounting to please the prospects. And so those are the different ways in which your nervous system shows up in your world and on the sales floor. And so the work that I do with my clients is to help them become aware of how it shows up for them. First step is to become aware when it shows up for you, how it shows up for you, and then becoming aware of it in real time so that you can break that pattern.
That's incredible. And why do you think high performers quietly battle overthinking, self-doubt, motivation, emotional
Yeah.
exhaustion? Why don't they talk about it?
So I will tell you based off of what my clients have told me. The first thing is I think number one is the fact that still a lot of like this work is like fluffy in the sales world. And so there's that piece. But also, I had a client who was going through it and he brought it up to his sales manager. And his sales, instead of holding that space for him, his sales manager wasn't able to relate to him in that sense, as in, like, I don't understand why you're feeling this way. Like, you made it to President's Club, you're making more money than half of these reps, and, you have an amazing life. And so I don't understand why you would feel this way. Like, you have so much to be happy and grateful for. And so because, of that, number one, being vulnerable in that way, but having it be received in that way tends to make people want to pull back. And on top of that, top performers, like because on the outside, on paper, they look successful, they feel guilty. They feel guilty for feeling the way that they feel because again, they have so much to be grateful for. There's so many other people who have it worse. There's so many other worse things that are happening in the world. And so because of that, they feel like they can't share it with other people because they don't have the right to feel the way that they do. And so they end up suffering in silence alone, which sucks. Which sucks because your feelings are valid.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. This is epic. Okay, so let's talk about poor performance, right? Because at the manager level, they're usually responding with, "Oh, we just need more coaching. We need more role play. We need more training," or they put pressure and fear tactics in place, and you know, it's a miss most of the time, right?
Mm.
So, what happens to a rep's nervous system when you're piling on that pressure? Does it break? Does it burn out? Does it move into action? What is happening there?
I think it's gonna depend on the rep and how their nervous system responds to pressure and stress. But I'll speak from my personal experience because
Sure.
my first few months in the senior role was it was tough. It was tough. And I was promoted like at the worst time. Like around November time and December time was when I was going through it and that was the message that I got and because of that, well, number 1, I knew that that wasn't the right way, but because what they say goes, like I had to listen anyway, and so I ended up working on weekends. I ended up working 12-hour days, and on top of that, having to go into our Monday weekly pipeline gen meetings, like telling everybody that I'm doing all the activities, but still not hitting that, but getting that external pressure just put me in a position where no matter it felt like no matter how hard I tried, like still couldn't find that level of success because of that pressure to perform. And so it led me to burnout, but also caused me to have a lot of anxiety attacks. Like I'd have anxiety attacks like late at night because this fear of being put on a pip, this fear of like never doing enough and just like being pushed to my wits end. Thank God like I made it out, like I doubled down on all the things that mattered, but by the end of the few months where I had to push and grind my way through there, like I was like tapped out and it was so bad to the point where it bled into my personal life. It bled into my personal life, like, I would be out with friends and family and would not be present at all, like, I went to go see an Anderson .Paak concert, but the entire time, I was just thinking about quota, and I couldn't be present because of that stress, and it bled through, like, my personal life, and that's not the way you wanna live, like, I don't think that way of pushing your reps to overcome underperformance helps because it just compromises their mental health and well-being, and this goes back to, my original mission is if your mental health and well-being aren't being prioritized and taken care of, it backfires. It backfires because you can only go so far with hustling and grinding your way through, and eventually you're gonna hit a wall, and I hit that wall. It was not a good time. It was not a good time.
Definitely. Can you walk us through the flow framework, reset, rewire, repeat?
Yes. So this framework, I will say is a framework for creating behavior change. And this is a framework that I've developed over my time studying this work from learning from other industry leaders and practitioners who've been doing this work for a while. Just like how there are foundations in sales for success, like there are foundations, there's a formula for creating behavior change, and you pick up patterns along the way, and that's what I've noticed with this work. So this framework specifically is a framework for creating behavior change that can be applied to a single moment in time, but also over length of time. And so it's broken down into 3 phases or pillars. And so the first one being reset. Reset in the sense where if you're wanting to get into flow state, you can't get into flow when you're operating from survival mode. It just won't happen. And so if you want to be able to get to that place, you first need to reset your nervous system. The way that I do that with my clients is through my mental reset meditation, which you can actually get through the feature section on my LinkedIn page. So we commit to a meditation practice over the course of 4 to 6 weeks to create a neutral and grounded baseline for you to take action. So that's over length of time, and then you can reset in the moment. So if you're sitting down to, do a cold call and you feel that resistance kicks in, you can also leverage different rewiring techniques. So as I mentioned to you guys earlier, so bilateral stimulation is a perfect one to reset in the moment. So you reset your nervous system. And once you've created a neutral and grounded baseline, then we pivot and transition into rewire. Rewire is all about going deep beneath the behaviors that's limiting you and creating new neural networks in your subconscious mind and body to actually create behavior change that's actually going to stick. Because, as I've mentioned, every single behavior that you're expressing is just, an external expression of a subconscious belief that you have about yourself. And so let's apply this into the context of, a rep who is struggling to be consistent with cold call blocks, right? The reason why is because on the surface, perfectionism is the behavior, but beneath that, the deeply rooted belief beneath that is, if I fail and get rejected, then that means I'm not good enough. That means I'm not worthy of love. And so it doesn't matter, like, no matter how hard you try to push through with willpower and discipline, if you aren't rewiring that belief at the level of the subconscious mind, then the behavior change isn't going to stick. And so
Right.
do that through a couple of different modalities, whether or not it's EMDR, breath work, memory reconsolidation, like those are the different ways in which I do that with my clients. And so we go ahead and do that. And once we do that, then we pivot into the third phase of the framework. And it's all about repeat. Because at this point, like, you've done the rewiring, now it's about repetition, 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 so that it sticks, so that you're building in new neural networks, and so that behavior change is actually lasting instead of you making some initial progress and then relapsing back to your old behaviors again. And that takes time.
Okay.
That takes time
Oh,
because typical
yeah.
behavior change is anywhere between 3 to 6 months. And so you need to
Mhm.
put in the repetitions for that. Just like how you train your physical fitness in the gym through repetitions with the weights, right? It's the same thing. You're training your mental and emotional fitness through repetition.
Oh, this is amazing. So let's jump into, rejection, right? And it's because it's, our show's called Do Hard Things, and it started off as my family motto, but then it turned into my way of using that family motto to deal with rejection when I got into sales. Like, every time I got rejected, I just remembered said to myself, "Do hard things, do hard things, do hard things." You know what I mean? And so when rejection's baked into sales, and the whole point of being successful in sales is consistency. So now we got consistency is your pathway to success. You're getting rejected every single day. How does this, how does this work when trying to avoid it, right? So what's the difference between a rep who is recovering quickly and then another rep who just spirals and just can't recover, and speed is actually what needs to be trained?
Yeah. So first thing I'll say is this is when you're in sales, you just have to accept that rejection is part of the process. We all know and understand that conceptually, but when we're actually faced with the thing, the rejection itself, it becomes hard to live in practice. But the difference between the reps who are able to reset quickly versus the one who spiral for days on end or shut down are the ones who can detach their sense of self-worth to the rejection. Because the reason why you spiral is because you make it mean something about yourself. When someone is rejecting you on a cold call, like they are rejecting whatever it is, maybe the solution isn't the right fit or it's not the right time, or you caught someone in a bad mood or whatnot. They're not rejecting you, they're just rejecting, whatever. But if you make it mean something about yourself and you tie your word to that, that's when it becomes hard to reset. And so, number one, learn how to separate that from your self worth. And then once you're able to do that, then it's easier for you to come back to a neutral and grounded baseline. And the same thing applies to failure as well. It's like you have to detach. And we say that so much, and that has to be something that's lived in practice.
Yeah, and you talk about eliminating panic execution. What does that look like? Where does it come from? And what's the cost to a rep's results when they're operating from that place?
Yes, so the panic execution is what I mentioned, tying back to what I said about the way in which a dysregulated nervous system can show up on the sales floor. Panic execution typically stems from fear, right? It's self one versus self two that is showing up in in your day to day in sales. And so when someone is executing from a place of panic, it's typically like, oh, I am behind in my quota. So now I need to go and, you know, white knuckle my way through. And so, when that ends up being the default response for panic execution, not only does that hurt your conversion rates, but you're also burning through your TAM, if you have a high quality lead list.
Yeah, totally. And you've said entrepreneurship costs you time, money, failed investments, and relationships, and that you've wanted to quit many times. What keeps you going, and what does doing hard things actually require that no one really prepares you for?
Yeah. So first, I would say honestly, like the first few years of entrepreneurship was like so hard. It was so hard. Like I've wanted to quit so many times, you guys, like so many times. But the reason why I didn't want to quit or came down to a few things. Number one is I'm just not a quitter. I'm just not a quitter. It's just not who I am. Like it's not
Right.
that's not a part of my identity. So
Yep.
because of that, like I've just never been a quitter and I've always just operated from the mindset that I don't care how long it takes for me to get to where I want to go. Even if it takes me 20 years, like I will always keep at it no matter what. So there's that piece. But also because I've invested so much time, energy, and effort into building this thing, it would be a waste to quit, right? I've already put in so much money. There's no way that I can quit now because I'm too deep in it. And because I'm too deep in it, I have to go. Like I have to keep going. Like there's no other way. And also partially is like fear of failure for me specifically, but in the sense like failure to me is quitting. Like I don't mind like having a failed launch or anything like that. I've done the work to separate myself from that, so it's not as hard for me to do that now. And on top of that, what also kept me going is the fact that like I do feel called to do this work. Like I feel like my soul is supposed to be doing this work and because like this work lights me up so much, like I can't see myself doing anything else. Like, that's also why, I'm still going, right? That's also why I'm still going, but I think, when it comes to it actually being hard, and I was actually just thinking about this, like what actually makes something hard, right? When we think about doing hard things, it's more of just like how it feels in doing the actual thing. Like there's how it feels viscerally for us. And so when you're starting entrepreneurship, it's hard as in good hard. Like it's hard because you're learning new things. You're learning how to market yourself. You're learning how to overcome fear of judgment. You're learning how to, do sales calls. You're learning how to set up systems and operations and then like learning how to be the CFO of like your own business. Like all of those things are hard in the sense that it's like growing pains. That's what makes it hard is just learning how to sit with the discomfort and which it shows up for you in your body. I think when we're doing hard things, it's how it feels when we're actually doing it. But honestly, I'm grateful for it because like the first 5 years like has been incredibly hard, but now that I've done the work to like overcome it, even now as after my fourth layoff, like I don't find the things of entrepreneurship as hard as it was before. Honestly, it feels a bit more easy now because of the learning growth that comes with it. And so when it comes to preparing yourself to do hard things, the biggest thing that I've had to learn myself is hard things require for you to do a lot of inner work and hard things required for you to do a lot of personal development work, especially in entrepreneurship itself. Like I always say that entrepreneurship is personal development on crack.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're learning so much about yourself. Like you're learning so much about how you manage money and how that bleeds into your business. Or like, oh, if my clients aren't doing well, my worth is attached to my clients. Or like, the reason why I'm procrastinating on creating content is because I'm afraid that what people are going to think of me. So like all of those things is like what makes it hard is you're overcoming your own limitations. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that because it means you're going to have to confront a lot of things that you might have, avoided in the past. And so entrepreneurship is what exposes all of those things. But honestly, like, in a way, you kind of learn to appreciate it and love doing hard things because of the reward that comes from it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's worth it. That's the best part, right? It's worth it. So you are awesome, and thank you so much for coming on the show. My last question to you is really for our audience, right? So if there's a sales rep listening right now, and they recognize themselves as everything you've described, right? They're overthinking, maybe the inconsistency is there, or they're just exhausted, or maybe the quota grind is getting to them. What's that first thing that we can leave them with that you would tell them right now?
First thing I would say to a rep who is in this place right now is number one is like, I'm so sorry to hear that you are going through it. I've been there myself and it's not a good place or a fun place to be in. The good thing here is number one is like you're not alone. And what you are experiencing internally is just your nervous system trying to protect you in the way that it knows how. And there is another way. Like you don't have to suffer. This doesn't have to be the way for you to be able to get to the other side. There are ways to overcome this. And the first step I would say is to learn how to come back to a sense of safety and connection in your body. Double down on nervous system regulation. It will pay off in so many ways. There's so many different ways and modalities for this. My favorite way is meditation. And so I do have a meditation that I share with my clients. And so within 4 to 6 weeks, like with consistency and incorporating this into your day to day, like you'll feel so much better. You'll feel so much better. And so that would be the first place in which, you can start changing things and turning things around for yourself.
Awesome. And thank you so much for everything. This has been really great. If somebody feels they're the right person that should reach out to you, they're struggling, where's the best place for them to do so?
Yeah, so you can actually find me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content over there. And so you can just go to linkedin.com/IN/MALISA-NGUYEN. And then another slash and find me there on LinkedIn. And then, if you would like support for something like this, then you can just scroll into my features section, book a call with me for us to chat through things and seeing how I can support you. And then also, again, like my mental reset meditation on my features section as well. Go ahead and try that out. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. And so it's so appreciative. And there's so many people I know listening that need to hear your work and need to connect. So go out and connect with Melissa and work with her. She's incredible at doing this. Thank you so much. And for all of those who are listening, thank you so much for joining us. Keep doing the hard things. And Lexi and I will definitely see you on the next one. Take care.